Hello everyone, and welcome to the National Dialogue on Youth Engagement in Climate Action, Biodiversity, Forestry and Agriculture in Sri Lanka, organized by SLYCAN Trust. My name is Sunasha Yakanayaka and I'll be your moderator for the day. This dialogue is organized as part of a project on participatory NDCs for a climate just response in a COVID-19 world that is supported by the German Ministry of Federal Economic Cooperation and Development. To start off, we actually have a Mentimeter that we have set up. Just going to quickly put that on the chat and share my screen with you. So if you could kindly log on to menti.com and use the code 76106061. And there should be a question on your screen that says, how would you best describe your organization? So whether you're a CSO from a government organization, private organization, academia, or other. We will keep it up for a few seconds. If you have any trouble accessing it, please let me know. And also hello to everyone who has joined us on Facebook. You could also log on to menti.com and use the code 76106061. So we have one person from a civil society organization. We have two. I'm going to keep it on. We have someone from private organization and right. Okay then, I'm just going to move on to the next slide that we have, and that is there's a bit more work on that, if you don't mind. So we have three statements here, and basically this is based on your opinion and how, according to you, do you think would you raise the knowledge of youth on indices and other climate change processes. So we have nationally determined contributions, national adaptation plans, and sustainable development goals. So you could hover there should be a little bar over here, and you could rate it from very high to very low to very high. Okay, so all right. And also please note that your responses are anonymous and no one would know what anyone said. So once again, you could log on to menti.com and use the code 76106061. Okay. So we are ranking high on the sustainable development goals and some of the national determined contributions and 3 for national adaptation plans. Okay. All right. Thank you very much to everyone who took part in a little activity for the day. To start off today's sessions, I would like to first invite Ms. Fleur Newman. She is the Action Empowerment Unit lead and gender focal point to women at the UNFCCC Secretariat. Ms. Newman, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sanasha, and it's great to be here again with you all to talk a little bit about what's happening at the international process and the framework for how youth can engage in climate policy and action. I'm just going to share my screen. I have a couple of slides that set out a little bit about what's happening at the international level and activities for this year. So what I'm showing you here is the elements of 2 articles under the convention, so the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and also under the Paris Agreement. So under each of these treaties, there is activities that or commitment by countries to each of those treaties to undertake action on climate education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation. And this has then been supplemented by a work program which sets out the how-to. So what's in the treaty is what is aimed to be achieved in relation to these aspects. And then there's a work program which sets out how you might go about doing that as a country and who might be involved in that. And so then children and youth have come through as a cross-cutting focus area in that work program. And over the last 8 years, so the Doha work program on Article 6, because at that time the Paris Agreement hadn't been agreed, so in 2012, the Doha work program has been in place for 8 years, and within that there was specific focus on children and youth. And subsequently, under the Paris Agreement, there was a decision in Katowice in Poland which reinforced the fact that children and youth and the promotion of their participation and leadership in climate policy and action is a very important element of us being able to achieve the Paris Agreement objective of keeping global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and ideally 1.5 degrees. So there's a recognition that in one part that climate education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation are vital elements. These are foundational in being able to achieve the goal of the Paris Agreement. And then subsequently also this understanding that it's very important that everybody is involved, and that includes children and youth. And this comes back to the fact that although a lot of the focus within the UNFCCC process is on the technical solutions to climate change, those technical solutions are underpinned by science and technology, engineering, math, and all of those things are linked to education. And that, and in addition to that, going beyond formal education, there's a need for the public, everybody, children through to the elderly, to be understanding what the climate emergency is about and how they can contribute or to address issues of mitigation or adaptation, understanding what the implications are in their specific circumstances. And this, it has perhaps not been understood as well or as deeply as the science, this aspect of the social aspect of climate change. Anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions are anthropogenic. They're created from the decisions, the actions, the behaviours of humans. And we need behaviour change. And some of that comes through education. It comes through people understanding their role and understanding how they impact, understanding how climate change happens. So this is one of the reasons why this is so foundational, is that with these pieces, everything else flows. And this year, so the Doha work program that I was just mentioning was agreed in 2012. And there have been subsequent decisions related to education, public awareness, ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment. And the Doha Work Programme is under review and is going to be the subject of negotiations at COP26 and before COP26. So the decision at COP26 is intended to be a successor work program to the Doha Work Program, and it will cover both the Paris Agreement and the Convention articles on this topic. And the idea here is to, again, provide an international framework for how to strengthen action in each of those 6 elements, with children and youth as a cross-cutting focus area. And there's ways in which, so this is one aspect. This is the international framework. It's what has driven the development of nationally determined contributions and national adaptation plans. These are products of both the Convention and the Paris Agreement. And because this is a global issue, it's important that we have an international framework that is able to guide the activities of countries, and that there's an understanding between countries about what action needs to be taken, because the action of one country is not enough. We need the action of every country. And one of the ways in which youth can engage within the UNFCCC process is through the official children and youth constituency known as YOUNGO, and that constituency is an official constituency in the process, which means that there are activities and interactions that are guided by the processes of the international process. And so the constituency can engage in discussions with parties, with heads of delegation, with the executive secretary of the UNFCCC. By being a part of a constituency, it allows for an official engagement in the international process. But there are lots and lots of other ways in which children and youth can be engaging in climate action and climate policy. One of the key asks of YOUNGO is that there is an increase in the number of youth who are included in national delegations to the UNFCCC, for example, but also the need for young people to be included in the national processes for developing climate policy, and that includes nationally determined contributions, which are the main vehicle under the Paris Agreement for which mitigation action, and in some countries also adaptation action, is included. And it's through the nationally determined contributions that we see the targets for, or the contribution that each country will make in terms of mitigation. And that number, that aggregate number, is what will inform policy in terms of decarbonising transport sector, or decarbonising the energy sector, or so that renewables are the dominant energy source and that fossil fuels are phased out. It's the tool through which those economy-wide decisions are going to be made, and it helps the international community to understand where we're going as a global as a world in terms of the aggregate emissions. And that matters because we need to see whether or not we're on track to keep the temperature to 1.5 degrees and well below 2 degrees. And that can only be done if that information is reported, and it's reported through the UNFCCC process. And one of the ways in which that is reported is through greenhouse gas inventories, but also the intention of countries is being reported through their nationally determined contributions. So the decisions that are being made around what sectors are priority sectors for a country in terms of what gets included in the nationally determined contribution, and the decisions that are being made around where the recovery packages, for instance, for as we respond to this global health pandemic. In some countries, that's being done through a cross-ministerial body, which in some cases includes youth. And this is one area in which youth are looking for ways to engage at a national level. And there are other initiatives which are being set up in different regions, with very recently in the Asia Pacific region, a platform being created for youth to engage, and also to engage with policymakers, and that's being supported through a partnership with UNDP, the British Council and others. There's another one that's been set up in Ghana, which is looking at the specifically at green entrepreneurship for youth, and another that's being set up in Dubai with the same focus on areas that are particularly relevant to youth, including how to ensure that young people are equipped with the right skills to be able to move forward as we make this transition to low carbon and just and climate resilient societies and economies. The importance of children and youth being engaged in these processes may seem obvious, but it's worth restating that young people are going to be the ones dealing with the worst impacts of climate change over the coming decades, and need to be fully cognizant of what that means in every aspect of the economy. What does that mean in context of health policy? What does it mean in the context of biodiversity? What does it mean in the context of ensuring food security and climate resilient agriculture? So these are all areas where the future of work is going to require people to understand and have a climate lens focus. And so it's really important that young people are engaging in these processes and have an understanding of why it matters and how they can contribute, and the conversations that they can be having amongst themselves, but also with policymakers. Climate change affects every aspect of our lives and will impact some communities far more than others. We all need to be contributing to the solutions, and young people have an opportunity to leapfrog some of the norms and customs that the current generations have grown up with, and see a future which is truly inclusive and enables all to thrive, as well as restoring our wonderful world to the natural world to where it was prior to us not taking into account its full value in sustaining us and its full value, just its inherent value. I'm going to leave you with this thought that we all have a responsibility, but that young people also have a real opportunity here to take steps now to ensure that the world in which they are leaders, they are making decisions informed by science and the sustainable the principles of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Newman, for that presentation and for also sticking to time very well. I would kindly like to request everyone who are with us right now to, if you have any questions for Ms. Newman, to kindly drop it on the chat, and she has another engagement and will not be able to stay throughout. So we will take in some questions in for Ms. Newman. Just one question maybe from my side to start off. You did mention of the different processes of where youth can be engaged in this dialogue, but just want to know particularly, and this is something that we also hope to discuss a bit later, particularly to this region, if I may, what in your opinion, like what resources, capacities, and support would you say that youth are in need of in order to better engage?
Sorry, I just missed the last part of your question. What resources?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, what resources and support and what sort of capacities would youth in this region in particular would need to better engage in the climate dialogue?
Yeah, I think that in this region there is, as I say, there's been this recent launch of a youth platform because there was a recognition of the need to create more opportunity for capacity building, for people for young people to engage in the topic outside of perhaps formal education, being able to engage in this with specialists who are working in the area of climate change. And so this platform has been created for Asia and the Pacific. And there is also, as I say, this growing recognition of the need also in through this a platform that's been created out of Dubai, again with a focus on particularly on jobs and skills that are required for jobs. But I think in the region, I think there's also to the extent that countries are able to engage youth in their planning, I think having examples of where that's been done well is important so that others can replicate it.
Right. Thank you very much. And just let anyone know that if you have questions for Ms. Newman, please do drop this on the chat as well. Also, maybe, sorry, there's a quick question from Dennis. How can youth from rural communities without good digital access best connect the processes at national levels, such as NDCs, and to the intergovernmental processes? How can they facilitate and support their engagement?
Thanks, Dennis. Good question. I think one of the things is that, and this is one of, I was speaking yesterday at another event where we were talking about the importance of this not only coordination across ministries, which is very important, but also coordination from a national to a subnational to a local level, because a lot of this sort of engagement at a community level is really important, particularly in situations where digital access is limited. And I know that I think that one of the ways in which is to identify technology that is available. So whether that's through things like text-based groups who can engage together, whether it's through radio, local radio, whether it's different ways in which we can use the means that are available in a particular community, and linking that back up into the national process. So there's also a role there for national governments to think about how that coordination happens, and part of that is ensuring that those who are remote are actually able to engage. And then I see another question there about if there's a focal point, and there is a focal point. There's a national focal point for every country to the UNFCCC, and that focal point is the person who receives all of the engagement information from the Secretariat. But the other way in which Sri Lankan youth can involve themselves in the UNFCCC is to join Youngo as a member of the constituency. And I don't actually have the link here, but I can share that with you for later.
Thank you very much, Ms. Newman, and also I think what Dennis is as a follow-up response. I would also maybe like to ask, you did mention a bit about this, but with COVID-19, how has this also kind of changed the ongoing work that has been already put in place to better engage youth? I know there have been some drawbacks in this regard, but how does this look in the future?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, because there have definitely been, obviously, there's been some real challenges, but what it has done is got us all really comfortable with doing things virtually. So, there is a lot more of this kind of engagement. So part of the challenge now is to bridge those digital divides, is to make sure that there are spaces in which people can have, even if it's not in their own home, that there's spaces in which people can engage through these virtual meetings, because it does actually create this opportunity that was not much used in the past, and I think is only going to increase in the future. So this idea of us not only doing virtual events, but things like hybrid events, once again we're able to come together to bring different people from different places together. And I think this is a new part of the future. Like we won't stop doing this. I think it will only increase.
Great, thank you. I'm wondering if any of the panelists with us would also have questions for Ms. Newman, or anyone who's joining us from here or on Facebook. Because if not, I do have some questions to ask. So it's just let anyone know that you could also unmute yourselves rather, and ask Ms. Newman any questions that you would have.
And of course, I'm very happy to follow up with any answers afterwards. I do have another engagement I need to go to.
Okay. I guess since we don't have further questions, at least not at the moment, but if you do, we could definitely follow up with Ms. Newman and get back to you on this. But if not, I would like to very much thank Ms. Newman for giving us your time. Once again, this is not the first time, she's been with us for many times in the past as well. So thank you very much for giving us your time and again to being here today.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation, and good luck for the rest of the event. I wish I could stay. Thank you. Bye.
Now I would like to move on to our next presentation. However, prior to that, I have a couple of announcements to make. First of all, we have a registration form. I will drop the link in the chat. Please do fill that out. That would serve as our virtual registration form for this event. If you have any trouble accessing the form, please do message me directly and I'll be happy to help you out. And also, if you have any questions for the speakers from now on, please do drop them on the chat as well. We will take them up at the end of all of the presentations. With that said, I would like to move on to our next presentation by Professor Budi Marambe. He's a senior professor of weed science at the Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. He's also a member of the National Experts Committee on Climate Change Adaptation at the Ministry of Environment. Professor Marambe, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Sanasha, for the invitation. And thank you very much, SLYCAN, for bringing me in to this very important discussion. I mean, there have been a lot of chats, discussions, dialogues that have been going on youth involvement in climate action. So it's another forum, and I'm sure it will be a fruitful one as well. Lots of things have been spoken about climate change over the years. It's very difficult to even count the number of such programs that we have attended as resource persons, as participants, as panelists, whichever the way that you name. But still, it seems that there's more dialogue is required, more educational activities are required to make sure not only youth, everyone in the planet join hands together and come forward for this climate action networks that we are carrying out. So today's dialogue or chat is basically on youth, but let me start on with a different mode. We had a very good introductory remark with respect to international conventions, UNFCCC and Paris Agreement, how they look at youth and children as cross-cutting area with respect to climate action. Thinking of climate change is all depends on how we feel it at the end. So how we feel it in most of the cases by the changes in the temperature around us. We have seen many figures, many graphs going on to show how the climate has changed over the years, how the environmental temperature has changed over the years. This very recent analysis very clearly says that the 10 hottest years since the human civilization on this planet Earth has occurred in the 21st century. We have just completed about 21 years, isn't it, in the 21st century, starting from year 2000. So we are in the 22nd year, for example, if you look at it that way. When you look at the overall picture, the important part to see that year 2020, leave out the COVID pandemic aside, but year 2020 is the second recorded hottest year on Earth. Something to ponder about. So the important thing is temperature is increasing and it will continue to increase at different degrees, of course. We have started feeling it already. That's why I've always been saying that climate change is not a myth, but a fact. It's happening around us. And youth will be feeling it much more for a longer period, spending more energy, more money, more time to tackle this dangerous climate change. So let's start learning about it more. Let's get proactive at this particular time. Right now, today, it's late but not too late, but then start moving on together, hand in hand with every community in the world to make sure this dangerous climate change is tackled, the solutions are found. The contribution to climate change is minimized to the best possible extent and adapt to make sure that we'll not feel the impact in the long run. So that's the basic message that I want to give to everyone. I will be taking examples from Sri Lanka to show what's going on very quickly. These are very popular figures that I've shown everywhere. Thanks to Dr. Punyavardhan and his team, we have got this type of information being done. And I'm sure, I know that people like, I saw Dr. Satyapal on the screen, as a panelist. And there are many other people who are working on these type of activities to predict the future, to forecast the future and let people know, project it and let people know that what is in store for us for future. And what we knew in the recent past is that the wet zone is in the western province, as you see, and the dry zone is about 2/3 of the country in the northwestern and northeastern and the southern provinces. If you look at it, the whole scenario carefully, all information that is available and the analysis that has been done very clearly indicate that the wetter part of Sri Lanka is getting better. Remember, more water means more trouble, especially in terms of agriculture. Let's go a little bit further on this particular aspect. It's not only the water, not only the availability of water, the increasing temperature has also created problems. Wet zone, as I told you earlier, is getting wetter. Now, this is our dry zone, as you see on the screen. The north central, northwestern, northern eastern, and the southern. And the temperature of the dry zone is going to be higher. So the wet zone is wetter, and on the other hand, the dry zone is getting drier, because in Sri Lanka, the temperature and dryness go hand in hand. Not a good thing for agriculture. More water is problem. More water is a troublesome thing, and less water is equally troublesome. So that is where the problem is. That is where the title of today matches very well, that we are looking at the climate change, its impact on agriculture, its impact on forestry, biodiversity, and so on, and youth at the end. So please keep this picture in mind, because we should not forget this whenever the time that we start talking about climate change, because climate change is future. And here we are talking about future. Important points. Sorry, I went back. And we have seen these type of scenarios in Sri Lanka quite often. I'm bringing, as I told you, bringing examples from Sri Lanka rather than in the global scale. So this is important because we have always seen and experienced in the past either flash floods or floods followed by drought or drought followed by floods. Each and every scenario has affected day-to-day life of all of us. It has affected agriculture, it has affected the natural ecosystem. You name it, we have it in the case of impacts. Always negative. We have seen loss of human lives, and our livelihood is affected, more importantly. Sri Lanka is a country that is working on a very thin budget margin, and we cannot spend more unless we get together and have our services to the nation to see at least the impact that is felt will be minimized. So youth, children, with the adults, we have to take the lead. Every individual. That's the important part, whether though we focus the issue with respect to this particular forum. Okay, it's not rocket science to let you know about food security, how the climate change would affect food security. We know in terms of a few definition. We are worried about, is there enough food to go around? Talking about availability. Can it be reached efficiently? Access? Can it be bought at fair price? Affordability? Is the food edible? Of course, quality. Is the food part of the balanced diet? Nutrition? And could it harm health? That's safety. All these aspects that will finally boil down to food security, individually or collectively, are affected by climate change. Simply, the drought and floods will reduce the yield, will reduce the availability of food, will, of course, hinder or affect the transportation of food. Food distribution is affected. We saw in the COVID pandemic area, the distribution is affected heavily due to the logistical issues. Same thing happens with respect to climate change. That's one simple example to let you know what is in store for us with respect to climate change in the future. Let me move forward. Any questions can be answered later. Then comes the biodiversity, the precious resource that we have in this country, being a biodiversity hotspot. Nothing to be proud of, definitely, but then still, the endemicity in this country is extremely high, and anything that challenges that endemicity cannot be tolerated if we are to make sure we conserve and make use of that conserved biodiversity in a sustainable manner for the development of the country to achieve the food security and so on. So that is the important part. Look at the endemicity in Sri Lanka, thanks to the red list that was published in 2012. And this is what it says. There are updated versions definitely elsewhere, but it's important to understand we have a very rich endemicity in this country. And if at all we are not going to look after it, then our livelihood, our living is going to be affected very badly. And climate change is one such important phenomenon created by human being, anthropogenic nature, which is hitting us back very hard and affecting our ecosystem and our livelihood. You simply cannot forget what's going on those things. Okay, so that's about agriculture. That's about biodiversity. I will show you a few slides with respect to forestry and so on. How does it impact on you? There's always enormous impact on human life. Social relations being affected, the economic prospects, the economic activities are being affected. The whole ecosystems have been destroyed in most cases, maybe due to landslides, maybe due to forest fires and so on, whether man-made or natural. The photograph that you see here is a photograph that was published in newspapers, attracted eyes of many people in Sri Lanka at least, to show a youth risking his life, making sure the food supplies are ensured for his family and parents. At a time where there was flash floods in Sri Lanka in 2016. 2016 was a very bad year for our country. 2016, 2017 together, 3 consecutive cultivating seasons did not work thanks to climate change. And that was the worst drought that we ever felt since 40 years' time, because the such previous drought was in 1973-74, although still under the prevailing circumstances about several years ago, we did not feel it much, but 2016-2017, we felt it hard. We felt it heavy on us. Sri Lanka, after quite a long period of time, had to import about 700,000 metric tons of rice in October to December period in 2017 to make sure our people are fed. And what you see on this screen here, for example, during that drought period, there were 3 days of heavy rain. Heavy rain, I mean, taking 93 lives, 96 lives in total, and 93 lives due to a landslide in Samasara mountain in Mavanal area. You simply cannot value this loss of lives. Though the World Bank has come up in terms of loss of damage and told us there's more than $560 million losses. I mean, you cannot value human beings. Of course, you're talking about other losses and other damages. That is where the impact on us, that's how climate change created by us have treated us in return. That's important thing to remember. Imminent flooding have been experienced in cities and coastal areas, and there's always expectation of more wildfires, of greater ferocity. We have seen it happening elsewhere. In Sri Lanka, we are not talking about wildfires. Still, it's man-made fires thanks to the dryness, thanks to the droughts, of course, that help people to move along, acquire land, to do various other activities, do hunting, for example, not in a primitive way though, but then, of course, it affects agriculture as well. More hurricanes of greater strength. For example, in Sri Lanka, until the dawn of the 21st century, we have actually never heard of tornado-type winds being damaged. We have seen photographs occurring elsewhere, but then now we have at least started feeling tornado-like winds. Small tornadoes, for example. I don't know if that's the correct definition to call it, correct way to identify it, affecting our lives, human beings, on the other hand. The disappearance of fertile lands. I mean, there are a lot of landslides, erosion due to heavy rainfall, and so on, and there's shortage of drinking water in the drought periods. All these things are happening in and around us. So what is the impact on drought? Impact on youth? It's anxiety. The anxiety provoking. That's one of the most important things for people who do not understand what is happening in and around us. So let's make sure we understand what's happening around us, especially the youth. You are not only the future, because you are creating the future. If you want to do that, let's know systemically what's happening around us. That's the important part. And climate change, we simply cannot ignore in this exercise of what's happening. And this is what's happening around us, around the world. People everywhere, youth getting together. What they say is climate action is not tomorrow, not today, but now. And that's the biggest message that we are going to get from elsewhere. I'm sure you don't need to introduce this young lady who have created an environment where youth collectively gathering around in the world to make sure this plea of making sure climate action is taken by youth now, not today, not tomorrow. So that's the message that we are getting. Look at what's happening. Look at the children, for example. I just thought of showing this slide, which was presented by this Senegal kid in COP23. COP23 is very close to our heart because that's the time period where the global community look at the coronavirus joint work on agriculture as a main theme under the UNFCCC to go ahead and work to make sure agriculture prospers and the agriculture is assisted around the world under variable and changing climate. This is what that kid said. Just read, I will read it for you as well. The sea is swallowing villages, eating away at shorelines, withering crops, relocation of people, cries over lost loved ones, dying of hunger and thirst. It's catastrophic. It's sad. Important part, it's real. So I think this touched my heart as well. It starts echoing in my mind always. This kid shouted loud, clear, to make sure it works up many people. It actually has woken up many people. And let's try to be in that bandwagon to support the activities that are happening around the world. And these are the voices, not in terms of sound, but written in letters to make sure people understand what's going around us. It's youth that are creating this. So let's join hands. So what can you do during my limited time period? Remember, Sri Lanka has, if I focus on Sri Lanka, we have already established our national climate change policy. We are looking at adaptation as well as mitigation. We have already done our national adaptation plan, which has been adopted in Sri Lanka, and we are now moving towards establishing or developing provincial level climate adaptation plan. This is a very important component in our future activities. We have already done our nationally determined contributions, but we are updating it. I'm sure you will hear more about it, about what's going to happen now. So the basic background baseline information has been made. The Ministry of Environment, the Climate Change Secretariat, which was established in 2008, is working hard to coordinate this activity. But still, there was a question a little while ago, what's the focal point? It's the Ministry of Environment in Sri Lanka for the time being, if you really want to go ahead and act. But make sure the National Adaptation Plan is going to come to your own villages, is going to come to your own provinces, to get your own ideas, to make sure more workable, adoptable, implementable action plan will be made at provincial level, aligning with the National Adaptation Plan. So that will be one point for everyone to get together and contribute. So let's be as youth, let's be proactive, and make sure you join hands with everyone. You push us as well. I'm not calling myself elderly, but then still just push us as well to make sure more action, looking at the future, making sure that youth will have a better life for future. Our children will have a better life for the future, and will have a minimum impact of climate change as well. So let's try to learn more about climate change in our own countries, in Sri Lanka. Let's team up to discuss climate change. And that's what's happening even today. And let's raise awareness among others. Don't just keep quiet. And let's volunteer to get youth concerns heard. We are worried our youth is concerned always that their voices are not heard. But let's volunteer to do so. Make sure policymakers have open eyes, ears, and make sure your concerns are understood. Create projects, come up with actions, be proactive, and to reduce the impacts of climate change in your community. There are a lot of steps, a lot of documentation being done, and there's a booklet on Young Humanitarian's Guide to Making a Move on Climate Change published internationally. And these are the 7 steps, simple steps that have been identified. You may not create history once again. You may not try to reinvent the wheel once again, So why not use the simple tools that are available, move forward, because we are sure these are the things that are in store for us. It's not only the impact not climate change does not only impact food security, biodiversity, and forestry. It will bring about larger issues, diseases, for example. And the bottom left-hand corner, the environmental changes that you see, and of course, the livelihood issues that will be on the cards. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's make sure we understand the subject more and be aware ourselves more, and just not keep being aware, make sure the information is disseminated, benefits other people, be proactive, and make sure that decisions are made collectively and implemented collectively. There are people to help you all, but of course, the leadership is what's important from your end. So thank you very much, SLYCAN, for giving me the opportunity. I will stop my presentation at this stage, and I'm open for discussion and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Maranbe, for that very enthusiastic presentation. I think that is the tone in which we actually have to set the rest of this session as well. So thank you very much. Also, to let everyone know, kindly do drop any questions you might have to Professor Maranbe on the chat, and we will take it forward a bit later. Now I would like to move to Mr. Anuj Satarasinghe. He's the Director, Ecosystems and Conservation here at SLYCAN Trust. Mr. Satarasinghe, over to you.
Thank you, Senasha, and hello everyone. I think after a very comprehensive presentation by Professor Buddhi Maranbe, I think it has made me much easier to focus on a small, portion of this entire discussion, which is the forestry sector and the climate change impacts on forestry sector and its the youth responsibility in it. And I just chose the first slide as just to show you the percentage of the greenhouse gases emitted due to agriculture, forestry, and other land uses, which is calculated as 24%, and out of which the forestry sector emissions for 12 to 15%, which is coming from the deforestation and degradation happening in developing countries. So, and also we all aware about that the twofold functions of the forest in this climate change scenario. One is work as a source of greenhouse gases, as well as the sink, like trees and other plants sequestrate carbon dioxide and reduce the GHG content in the atmosphere. So looking at that, just let me show you some of the benefits of forestry sector, just to tell you the importance of forestry sector for everyone, the life on the earth. Like globally, we know that 1.6 billion people, nearly about 25% of the world population, rely on forests for their livelihoods. And also, forest provides 75 to 100 billion US dollar goods and services. And also, the forests are home to 80% of the world terrestrial biodiversity. And again, so from the climate point of view, the forest help stabilize the climate, as we all know. And to maximize the climate benefits of forest, we must keep more forest landscapes intact, manage them more sustainably, and restore more of those landscapes which we have lost. So this is the slogan right now. Even in all even the development agendas, we talk about the forest landscape restoration or the forest landscape restoration approach, sort of a naval concept. And they also have, the scientists have found out that the loss of degradation of natural systems and promoting their restoration have potential to contribute to 1/3 of the total climate change mitigation by 2030. And if we look at the Bond Challenge, restoring of 350 million hectares could sequester up to 1.7 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent to the annual. This is just to highlight how important the forestry sector, even in the range of climate change. And coming to the Sri Lankan situation, we have, within this small island, we have very different types of forest ecosystems, from lowland rainforests, which have the highly complicated structure, and to the dry zone and arid zone vegetations, which have the different rates of carbon sequestration from rainforest, tropical rainforest to the dry zone vegetation. So we have to deal with all these forests and their restoration patterns when we focus on the forestry sector and climate change. And impact of climate change on trees and other plants. I'm not only talking about the forestry sector here, but of course I would like to talk about trees and other plants because they equally do the sequestration through photosynthesis. So, I like to look at three aspects, like three types of impacts. The physiological impacts, like, now we learned from two previous presentations. The scenario, the climate impact are like the temperature rise, the drought, heavy rainfall, and then in addition to that, biological issues like spreading invasive species, and then forest fires, and social issues like the encroachment and destructions of forest vegetations due to extreme events. Now, if you take the physiological impacts happening within a tree or the forest like that, it will reduce the productivity with the increase in temperature, and also it will reduce the immunity of plants. And then drought again will create some water stress again the productivity. Maybe even the wood production or food production, whatever the productivity will be impacted, and most probably decrease the productivity and the immunity. And then coming to the biological impacts, even the pollination problems will be there, because most of the if the heavy rains get in the flowering season, and then most of the pollen will be washed off, and the food productivity will definitely go down. And also the spreading of invasive species, which we have noticed here in Sri Lanka, which is going to be a big, large impact for the health of ecosystems. So this is one big threat in Sri Lankan conditions at the moment. And then destruction due to extreme events, we know things like big storms and even the tsunami. We have seen how the trees were impacted and destroyed, especially the mangrove vegetations in the periphery of the sea. And forest fires, this was also mentioned by Professor Marabe. I mean, now we are experiencing frequent forest fires. Actually, the fires are human, but of course, then the frequencies has been increased. And then encroachments due to various socio-economical problems like the shortage of lack of jobs and suction to income generation due to various drastic effects. Extreme events, so the people tend to do more encroachment to the forest, and then again forest degradation and deforestation is happening. And finally, the actions taken by the government or the private organization or the NGOs, like this was also mentioned earlier. I mean, we have the National Adaptation Plan and also National Red Plus Investment Framework and Action Plan. Now, this the first one is looking at the adaptation, and the second one is mainly the forest cover enhancement and conservation, basically looking at the mitigation type of activities. And under these plans, as well as various other things, we can talk about the activities. Just to name few: introduction of suitable species that could be adapted to the changing climate, especially in the planting forest, I mean, production forestry, as well as in horticulture, fruit trees, as also the cereal crops and vegetables in agriculture. And then we need to control of invasive species, because the invasive species are inhabiting, as I mentioned earlier, and also most of the animal habitats are being affected in this. And also the forest fire, which I mentioned again earlier, like frequency has increased, and then it will again affect on the animal habitats as well as the health of the forest ecosystem. And promote stakeholder participation, especially the communities living in the peripheries of forest and the general public. This is through the awareness building as well as various other ways and means. I mean, get them to know how to react to these extreme events, as well as to take action in many different ways. And finally, the restoration of degraded sites, forest landscape restoration approach, which is we are not looking at, I mean, it's not just the reforestation, but looking at the entire landscape and trying to work with the different stakeholders and try to even to introduce different methods of planting, like not confined to a particular objective of planting trees for timber purposes or various other, but of course looking at the multiple objectives and trying to even to introduce agroforestry activities and livelihood options to have to develop some sort of sustainable management of the given landscape. And finally, the opportunities for the youth. Again, I'm focusing only on the forestry sector, and they can participate in monitoring and protection of forest resources. Now, for example, there are a number of software and applicable programs to watch the situation of forest, because there are two major ones. One is Forest Watch, and also there's another forest fire management system where you can even notice from your computer or the laptop where the forest possible forest fires happening, as well as forest clearings happening. So these type of programs could be easily used by the youth and work as monitoring agents. And also the youth can participate in protection forest resources. Now, for example, even within the forest department, you get a number of local organizations, the community-based organization in the peripheries of forest, especially the youth, and helping the department and giving information on illegal activities, as well as working with the department to protect forest, sort of vigilant groups. So this is one idea even for the both urban youth as well as the village, the rural youths, be able to help the conservation of forest resources in our country. And promoting conservation related messages through various campaigns, especially the social media, which is really popular among our youths. So you can even right now we have seen lots of messages are being passed if there's any sort of illegal activity happening. Similarly, you can even I invite you to pass the positive messages also, like even giving spreading awareness as well as technical know-how, because even now there are some very good youth organizations like Turu and various other people who are sharing their information of tree planting and even seeds and seed distribution and various other aspects of technical aspects of forestry. So this is really to be appreciated. And they can also participate in restoration programs, because still there are, but I think we have to improve this also. Within the forest department's network, you get forestry extension service, extension officers stationed in almost all range forest offices. There are 75 range forest officers. Each district you have 3 to 4 range forest officers, so you can easily approach them and get their guidance and assistance to promote forestry extension or the planting programs at regional or district level, and promoting planting trees outside forest areas, because extension agents are mainly focusing on planting and promoting trees outside forest, which is again, even in Sri Lankan condition, this is very, very important, because considerable amount of timber in Sri Lanka is coming from trees outside forest, like from home gardens and various other tree plantings other than the natural forest. And promoting nurseries, so this is again can consider it as a income generating activities also. Tree nursery or the seedling nurseries sort of income generating activity for rural communities as well as even for the urban people. So this is even you can even sell the seedlings to the forest department or even in public places. So this is sort of a tree plant, the income generating activity. And then also we can think of promoting sustainable livelihood options using natural resources. For example, village level nature-based tourism industry now. The popular places like Sinharaja, Kanneli and Knuckles, now the villages, they run their own homestay facilities and I mean tourism facilities. So this could also be promoted. Then the forest will forest is going to generate some income for the people, and whereas the people will tend to come protect their resource, which generate their income. And these are some of the sites like the promote trees outside forest. We can think of home guards as well as school guards and various the public sites, school gardens, temple premises, and even various other places, even roadside planting, which will provide and which will improve the tree cover. And finally, they will sequestrate the carbon dioxide or the excess greenhouse gases. And this is one example of restoration activity which is being carried out by Wildlife and Nature Protection Society. This trials was started in 2016. It's really a difficult site, but of course now they have come up with very good technical solutions. This abandoned tea estate, which was filled with fern, and then it has been cleared, being very, very important because it's sort of a slope, looking at the slope, and the soil erosion to be very high. And then now the seedlings were planted and coming up nicely. So this type of activities, even the youth can participate with the technical inputs from Forest Department, or even without Forest Department now. Of course, the universities, they have a lot of technical experts to help you. And promote restoration of mangrove ecosystems, because mangrove is mangrove has the highest potential of restoring carbon dioxide, sequestering carbon dioxide. So, and our mangroves, some of the areas are being destroyed and at the degradation state. So, I mean, again, the department promote mangrove nurseries, and they can provide training to the youth who are interested in establishing mangrove nurseries. So this is another possibility for the youth to participate in this. So these are the sites, available sites for restoration. Okay, so this is basically what I wanted to present you. So I will end up with these options, and also I would like to request and invite the youth groups here in Sri Lanka to just come in front and work with the department over as our project. So we can even facilitate this thing, and we can work with you for the betterment of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadhguru Singh, for that detailed presentation, and also welcome to everyone who's joining us from Facebook. Just let you know, this is part of this is a national dialogue on youth engagement in climate action, biodiversity, forestry, and agriculture in Sri Lanka. So thank you very much, Ms. Sadhguru Singh, for that presentation. I would now like to call upon Dr. Tusita Sugadapala. He's a senior consultant on climate change and sustainable development here at SLYCAN Trust.
Thank you, Sinachia. Good afternoon, everybody. I think the previous two presenters, was Marabe and Mr. Sadhguru Singh, paved the foundation for me to discuss another aspect of this topic. Hope you can see my presentation, Sinachia?
Not yet, Dr. Sugadapala.
Yeah, sorry. Let me share the presentation. Yeah, okay. Hope
you can see it now.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So my aim is basically to also talk in the same line, but touch upon this big picture, the sustainable development and climate action as a kind of a integrated way of tackling the challenges, especially looking at biodiversity, forestry, and agriculture. So I'll be talking on these topics. So basically, I will touch upon this with a broader context to put the things in the common framework for you to understand. First, talking about this human society as part of the environment. So, because sometimes we think that the environment is one thing, human society is something else, but it's not the case. So that's what I want to highlight here. With that, going into the sustainable development as a challenge, and then of course climate action as a tool to tackle these broader challenges highlighted in sustainable development or sustainable development goals. And then just pointed out how biodiversity, forestry and agriculture sector lie within this overall framework, and also highlighting the mainstream youth engagement in sustainable development and climate action within biodiversity, forestry and agriculture sectors. So when you look at the human society, the way we can understand these issues we are talking now, one way is to map human society within the broader picture of what we call biosphere and thus the environment. So when we look at the environment system, which can be understood in an ecological sense as a set of interactions, connectivity between the four spheres: the atmosphere, the air; hydrosphere, the water; lithosphere, the soil; and ecosphere, the plant and animal, where we are part of that, human. So in that context, these interactions we talked earlier, which define the environment system, include, of course, the natural or the causes or forces in nature, natural causes, and also anthropogenic or human sources and causes. So, as I pointed out earlier, we are also part of that. So, therefore, our activities also become part of the environment or environment activities. So, when you do that, when you map the human presence or society within the environment system or the biosphere, you can clearly see the dominancy played by the human in the environment. So, and in particular, the areas we talked already, that the environment degradation, the adverse impacts, even climate change. So that's also part of the environment, the changes in the environment, where we know the human presence has been the major the cause. So therefore, we have become the main element now, the human society of the environment. So in that context, that's the context I want to discuss this topic. So therefore, when we now map the biosphere of the environment, including the human activities that we see in this diagram. So typically, we have this air and water, the land, these three spheres we talk about: atmosphere, water, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. The ecosystem where plant and animals include us there. But then we can see there are other systems are now dominating within this environment system. One is urban system, the cities, even settlements. Then within that we have mobility and energy, like transport and so on. Energy is another key area. Infrastructure. Then we have the impact side, human health and safety and so on. So therefore the present when you do the presence of human within the biosphere has made the biosphere or the environment more complex. And of course, with that, there are many other reactions or actions or interactions happening. For example, urbanization and cities, then human settlements is some of the key, drivers. Then within that, we have governance and institutions come in there. Human behavior and lifestyle is already talked there, the importance of this aspect. Then demand growth and market forces is driving our development. The population dynamics is also important. Invention and innovation, technology change also create a lot of impact on the overall, the environment. Then of course the natural side, of course we have this climate action or climate change, the natural disasters, chemical pollution, and many other things. So air, water quality, the resource consumption, and so on. So we can see in the context of human, the person within the environment make this environment is more complex, and it can highlight basically this is complex system and dynamic, ever changing, and it has many facets and also multi-sectoral, and involve many stakeholders. Of course, youth is part of that. And then these are interconnected and interdependent. So we are talking about a complex system now, in which we are basically trying to resolve this issue of climate change, and in particular today's discussion is on like forestry, biodiversity, and those areas. So therefore, basically, what the final message we are getting through this one is we are part of the environment, but then environmental degradation has become a root cause for most of the global challenges we are facing, especially for sustainable development. So therefore, these climate actions or even the other environmental implications are now more deliberated within the broader context of sustainable development, which highlight all the other challenges faced by mankind. So I will just quickly touch upon, all of you are aware of this, but I just want to highlight this importance of climate action within sustainable development. So 2030 agenda for sustainable development, and of course subsequent the sustainable development goals, we have 17 goals, which came as to transformation required for our world towards sustainable development. So this particular framework gives or kind of give a guideline for us to come up with a solution framework addressing multiple challenges. So therefore, when you look at the SDGs, 17 SDGs, it highlights 17 challenges we are facing. So and also the solution framework, and also there are few guiding principles or principles which lay down the solution framework. So understanding of SDG is important. Now within the SDG, we know that there's one SDG that's it's among 7 out of 17, which talk about climate action. So but then although it's only 1 out of 17, when you look at the significance of climate change, already it has been elaborated earlier by Professor Maharabe and Mr. Satru Singh. It in fact poses the single largest threat to SD. So therefore, it's just not one SDG, but it's a very important SDG within sustainable development targets, so or indicators or goals. So therefore, now we look at the climate action is elaborated more on with the Paris Agreement and for climate change, and as well as nationally determined contributions, which put forward the actions for this the important aspect of climate change. And so therefore this Paris Agreement and NDCs also become equally important international convention like SDGs, which emphasize the importance of or essential nature of synergies between sustainable development and climate action. So therefore, when we elaborate climate action, we have to always make sure that we link that up to the sustainable development too, because that will make these climate actions are more practical and more implementable, because it also show the decision makers and policy makers the importance of climate action, not only for climate action, but also for other global challenges. So therefore, sustainable development and climate action in a way can be interpreted as climate action as one of the tool to make the sustainable development a reality. So therefore, it play a major role within SDGs. So this interpretation basically, if we don't do appropriate intervention in climate action, we are not going to achieve the much needed socio-economic development towards sustainability. On the other hand, if we do it properly, if we make the climate action properly, then that will have a particular integrated approach that will have core benefits, so that socio-economic development can be made possible through climate action. So therefore, always when we make climate action, adaptation or mitigation both, the link into SDGs become very important. So in fact, this approach can be easily or effectually can be done with the sector we are talking about now, biodiversity, forestry and agriculture, because this is also an area which is within the environment system. and also talk about the human, the interventions there. So therefore, biodiversity, forestry, and agriculture sector, we can, consider that as one of the area where we can effectively implement this concept, where SDGs and NDCs can be, achieved. So in that context, what I want to interpret the biodiversity, forestry, and agriculture as a subsystem which signify the human dominance in environment. So when we look at this biodiversity, forestry, and agriculture, the human dominance is there, which that's why we talk about this, the forestry and biodiversity within agriculture. So, so in that case context, you can see the importance is also highlighted in SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, as well as NDCs. So that's one thing. And then the important aspect is basically when you have that integrated approach, we can scale up climate actions or the NDCs, and which become central to effective progression towards SDGs, Sustainable Development or Sustainable Development Goals, while addressing climate action. So the entry points. Now, one of the reasons where we need to, consider SDGs within climate action or linking climate action to SDGs is that when you look at the policymakers, they will be more reactive to, development issues, especially SDG related, than just looking at the environment. So therefore, the way we can, advocate maybe policymakers or decision makers is to link climate action to SDGs, so that they will understand the multiple benefits. Then the resources, their policies, priorities can be developed towards climate action, so that climate actions will be more implementable. So when you look at in that context, there are certain opportunities for us, especially in the youth, to get engaged in different level, from strategic level to even operational level. I just highlight some of the things, especially in the Sri Lankan context, but these are common to others also. The presently localization of SDGs is happening, the targets, indicators, and SDGs. So since the procrastination is ongoing, there's an opportunity for stakeholders to get engaged, even the youth. Then, as highlighted earlier, also this Professor Marbe indicated this one, the updating of NDCs. Of course, it's already been almost finalized for this round, but this updating of NDCs are conforming. So there will be another round coming up in a couple of years, especially in 2024. There will be a global stock taking. I mean that we need to take action now. So this action process, the youth and other others can get engaged. Of course, what I highlighted here is basically the updating process, but then even the actions of NDCs, basically we can get engaged. That's highlighted later on. Then another important aspect which we still have not, I think, done in detail is to integration of or harmonization of SDGs and NDCs. Because SDGs, we have climate action, and these climate actions are integrated to other activities, all the other SDGs. So therefore, now NDCs basically talk about the climate action, but then when you look at this, the interconnectivity, so we have to see how NDCs and SDGs can be harmonized, so that the climate action can contribute to, as I said earlier, the sustainable development. So that integration is important. In fact, when we even monitoring and when progress monitoring and then reporting, we have to capture those areas. Then in this line also there are revision of national sectoral policies and plans. It's a continuum process. Now presently, probably some of you are aware that national environmental policy being revised, and also the national environmental action plan being revised. So therefore, in that revision process also, the stakeholder consultation is a key, where the youth will get opportunity to get involved. Then, of course, once you have these activities, we have to implement the activities. Now, SDGs, basically, we talk about 2015 to 2030, so it's ongoing process. NDCs, we basically, committed from 2020, that last year, to 2030, so it's also ongoing. So therefore, there will be activities which will be implemented or which are being implemented. And in that implementation process or operationalization process, youth can get engaged. So that's all the other stakeholders and youth together. Then of course we have to monitor, report the progress and get the feedback to close the loop. So all these are happening now. So all these become entry point for the youth to engage effectively. The reason is basically youth are a key stakeholder group in the development process. Thus, their active engagement in all these stages is stipulated. All these areas I highlighted are required, though it's not maybe happening the way we stipulated, but that's a requirement. In addition, the reflection on SDGs and indices in projects and programs is also elemental or required. Mean that any intervention we do, any activity we do can be linked to NDCs or SDGs, especially SDGs. And making that, highlighting that link is important. When you develop a project or program, always you have to make sure that you capture how this project contribute to SDGs. So that's where this importance comes there. You do activity in climate action, but there are implications on SDGs. So then you have to link that up so that when you prepare even project proposal, that linkage is important. But of course, there are challenges. Present situation, we look at the environment for youth to get engaged is weak. So therefore, there's an institutional vision for youth engagement. There's a lack of formal process for active engagement. So there's an issue for youth to get engaged. Then also, of course, the even I think decision makers or this institution does not clearly I think understand the principles of SDGs. Especially we talk about this whole of society approach or stakeholder engagement. These are not really captured there in our development process. That's a challenge, a barrier. Then of course we have the conventional top-down approach where the government-centered approaches are there. Again, that will limit the participation of stakeholders, especially youth, and also limited openness to novel and innovative forms of participation. Especially youth participation require novel approaches and innovative forms to make that their participation is more effective. That's not there, in particular in Sri Lanka. Then limited diversity in forms and arena of participation, because youth are diverse group, so that we have to understand their diversity and then make sure that all are given equal opportunity or to get engaged. And in addition, we also have lack of barriers or challenges from the youth side too. One thing is lack of awareness and capacity of youth on effective participation and engagement in formal processes. We need them to train them on that line, how to get engaged effectively in participation in these processes, and also inadequate guidance and experience in linking the operational level activities to strategic level. We do a lot of activities on the ground, but we don't know how to link that to the border context. For example, the sustainable development goals or targets or set there, we don't know how to link that. But that linkage, to link anything we do to this the sustainable development goals and targets become very important. Why we need the youth engagement basically is that because as I think at the beginning also is indicated that we are basically targeting them, because the most affected community among the stakeholders on these global challenges are the youth. So therefore they have a right to get involved, because they are the ones who are going to get most affected. Second, when you look at our present gaps, the policy coherence for sustainable development is a complex one, which need innovation and creativity. Most innovative and creative group among the stakeholders are youth. So therefore, youth participation become again essential. And also the same line, the changes required are transformational. So that we need futuristic, ambitious, and optimistic, intervention. The characters. So those characters of youth will help, especially to become active agents of change. Then, of course, the stakeholder engagement participations are vital, where youth are more flexible and extrovert, thus are more effective. So therefore, if every breath you take or every move you make give rise to effect on the environment, mean that you can link anything you do of course, related to climate action and going beyond that towards sustainable development goals. So therefore, that connectivity, always highlighting that, capturing that connectivity and highlighting that one is very important in any of the activities we do in climate actions. With that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sigatapala, for that presentation. And I think that actually sets some context for what is for the next two presentations, actually, by two of our very own staff members. And for those joining, I would like to let you all know that at SLYCAN Trust, we have a little over 50% of those who belong to the official age bracket of youth. So thank you very much, Ms. Satya Singh, and thank you for your presentation. I would now like to move on to Mr. Ashan Karunananda. He's a research and program officer here at SLYCAN Trust, and he will speak briefly on climate action, biodiversity, and youth. Ashan?
Thank you very much, Sanashia. Hope you could see the slides clearly.
Yes.
Good evening to everybody joining us. So during my presentation, I would be talking mainly on climate action, biodiversity, and youth. So where I would focus on how climate change has affected biodiversity and how youth could involve in taking actions to overcome it. So moving on, I have put a brief introduction to the biodiversity of Sri Lanka, as we should know on how biologically diverse Sri Lanka is in order to protect it. So Sri Lanka is one of the biodiversity hotspots identified in the world, and as Professor Marambe mentioned in his presentation, that it is not a big thing to boast, as the area where there is a huge threat as well due to the anthropogenic activities. And also Sri Lanka is considered as the richest country in the Asian region in terms of species concentration. So if you compare in countries like India, when you travel in Sri Lanka, there are more species in a given area when compared to other countries in the Asian region. And also there's a high endemism in the country. So roughly about 41% of the fish are endemic, and roughly 65% of the amphibians are endemic, and also reptiles about 52% and 10% of birds. And also over 80% of land snails are endemic to the country. So if you take, there are over 500 bird species in Sri Lanka, and out of which 34 are endemic. And also there are 248 butterfly species, and out of which 31 are endemic to the region. Currently, there are 108 snakes which have been recorded in the country, and in near future, these numbers tend to increase. And also the country has over 100 species of amphibians. So this shows that Sri Lanka is has a high diversity in species, but there have been a huge threat over the past decades. If you take deforestation, overexploitation, and also habitat degradation has really affected this. But what the people in Sri Lanka are unaware is that climate change is also gradually making an impact, and this impact is tend to increase in future, and it will actually make a huge threat to the biodiversity of our country. So in these slides, I have included few examples where climate change has impacted the biodiversity of country. For some species, there has been a change in distribution. So earlier species which were found in the dry zone are now a common sighting in the wet zone. So due to the temperature increase, but for the species who live in the higher areas, in the cooler areas, when the temperature increases, they don't have an area to move. So this would result in extinction. And also the climate change, the rising temperature would affect the gender ratio of reptiles, especially some of the turtles and the crocodiles. So their gender is based on their temperature. So when the temperature increases, there will be more female offspring. So with climate change, there's an increase in temperature, and it will make a gender imbalance and would reduce the diversity. And also the depletion in water resources. So this also will be a will make a huge threat to the country's biodiversity, as more and more human and animal conflicts will be there in future. And also another area is due to the sea level rise, the salt water intrusion is also making a huge threat. As the salt water enters the fresh waters of the country, it will affect the aquatic biodiversity in the country. So how could we overcome this, and how could we engage youth in the process in order to overcome this? So at SLYCAN Trust, as Senashia mentioned, we have identified that youth can play a huge role in the protection of the biodiversity. So we have been working in several projects where we have engaged youth, and in future we have planned many events so that the youth could actively participate with us together to protect our country from climate change and protect the biodiversity. And in my future slides, I have included some of the examples that SLYCAN Trust has done together with the youth. So starting off, we had our Global Youth Forum on Climate Change on December. This was organized for the 5th consecutive time, and this year it was in two sessions as the National and Global Youth Forum. This gave an opportunity for the youth to work and get a vast knowledge from the experts who joined us around the world. And adding into it, we had 4 different themes where the participants were requested to send in their proposals, and one of the 2 themes are the biodiversity and oceans and coastal ecosystems, which go in this line with this theme. So these proposals were developed throughout the forum, and hopefully we are planning to implement them in future. Then when it comes to the awareness, we have worked a lot, mainly a lot with the youth in the regions of Anuradhapura and Trincomalee. Here our main aim was to make them aware on the species around them, and also how they could use this to use them as an employability in future. So concepts such as sustainable tourism and ecotourism will be hit in the future. So by making them more knowledgeable, we could protect the diversity, as well as we could the youth in the area could find an income as well. So there will be 2 happening month. And also we have over the past 2 years we have worked a lot in mangrove restoration projects, as mangroves provide a habitat for lots of species. We have conducted projects in Jaffna, Kalpitia and Dikkovita. We have worked mainly with the youth, and also recently we had a cleanup done at Dikkovita, and our team at the SLYCAN Trust team got together and did a cleanup, and we conduct this event so that we could lead by example, and also other youth could follow with us. And also, now adding to that, now we have done some work regarding to mangrove monitoring, where we engage the youth in our team to monitor, and so that these mangrove species would be protected for future. So before ending my presentation, I would like to say our team is now currently discussing with many youth organizations, and hopefully I would like to invite all youth in our country to join with us to protect the biodiversity and from this climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashan, for that recap. I would now like to pass the screen on to Ms. Ruani De Silva. She's a research coordinator here at SLYCAN Trust, and she would briefly go through some of the ongoing research that we've been doing.
Hello everyone, hope you all are having a great Friday so far. I'm not going to keep you waiting too long, and I should just share my presentation. So to start off with, we are going to look at youth and climate change in Sri Lanka. That's basically the beginning of my presentation, and I would basically walk all of us through capacity building, and then gaps in the local setting, and what we could do to address these. Just to the third slide now. So to go on to the relationship between youth and climate change, as a lot of people in the audience would know, and most of our presenters mentioned, that youth are identified as a vulnerable group of people who is affected by climate change, and also uniquely fall into a group that could do something about making sure the future is better than what it is today. So that is the current relationship is identified as that between climate change and youth. So if you were to move on to the next slide in terms of research and capacity building. So that is where SLYCAN Trust as an organization comes in and gets involved in terms of conducting research, in terms of capacity building in all local settings around the country. So it could be in it could be in the form of agricultural projects in Trinco, or agricultural projects down south, or with the farming communities or the fishing communities, all including an element of youth. So we believe that it is very important to have an element of youth in every stage, so that you identify their problems at every stage. It's not just about bringing them into the final decision process and being like, now tell us what you think, but also identifying problems at each level, and also including all individuals. So we work with a lot of ground level individuals to make sure that we hear their problems and we hear what is going on as well. And we conduct a lot of capacity building workshops. And as mentioned by Ashan and even Senashia, we conduct a global youth forum where we come together and speak of all the problems and all the solutions for these specific problems, or the problems that could arise in future. So just to move on to the next slide, identifying gaps in the local setting. So when we do work with youth on the ground and youth at every level, we have come to understand that training and education and skill building plays a vital role in identifying in filling in these gaps, or even in identification of these gaps. It is very important that individuals have the right level of skill and education in this, and local solutions also play a role in, because it's not easy for anybody outside to come into a community and discuss or identify problems. So it's very important that the local communities and the local ground level people are involved in identifying these gaps in their local settings as well. So to move on to my final slide, what we can do to address this, it's, as you mentioned, education and skill development, also specifically localized education and skill development, because bringing in something from another country or another setting might not work to every single area in the country. So it is important that we have localized education and skill development seminars and workshops and awareness programs, as Ashan mentioned, and also inclusive participation in policy making at each level was also identified as a very important solution that could bring about the change that we are all looking for at this point. So just to end my conversation, we are currently in the middle of a research project that is identifying all these gaps, and that is working with a lot of youth. So we do have a chunk of data that we have collected at the moment, and by the end of the month we will be able to come to a conclusion as to where we are with the project as well. So if you all want to know any more details, please visit our website, and you can write to us as well through our website. Thank you, Senashia.
Thank you very much, Rooney. And I know that we are slightly running behind time as expected, but I think the discussion on the presentation so far have been really good. So before we get started with, right. Yeah, sorry. So that officially brings us close to the presentations made by the speakers. So now we would like to open the floor up to questions. And I would actually like to start with Damita's question, which he mentioned was too long to type. Damita, are you able to unmute yourself? Damita is a senior programmer at SLYCAN Trust. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Senashia. The question is an open question to any of our presenters. It also touches on what Dr. Sugadapala mentioned, like the innovativeness of connecting youth in climate action. What I see is, like, so far in Sri Lanka, we are still, when we talk of youth engagement, I think we are still looking at very conventional methods of having one-off events and, number of youths coming into that event and doing some activity, going back. That sort of a random engagement. What any ideas of what could be more systematic processes that we could have as a country to engage youth? I would give an example that came to my mind, whether we could do something as in the past I have seen, like during our parents' time, the young people who are willing to cultivate were given land for their cultivation, but at the same time, part of that land they had to grow forest. So that was a government strategy to ensure that they had, I think it was for timber cultivation, but timber forest. But anyway, that, ensured there were man-made forests coming up in the country as a strategic plan, where the young cultivators were involved in the process. So do we have any such things that fits to the modern day youth and to get them engaged in a more systematic manner?
I would like to open that question now to any of the speakers. So it's actually similar to, yes.
Yes, Senasya, may I?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Just a simple intervention. That's a very important question, I guess. All questions are important in that sense. But then, thanks, Damita, for bringing it up. There have been scenarios in the past, but then most of the things, as you quite correctly said, the efforts that have failed because of different reasons. The acts, regulations, all those things have affected a lot of activities in this country. But there's an opportunity now, Damit. I think what I feel is we have done a lot of good plans. We have good policies, for example. Where we have failed is implementing those things, because we did not got the involvement of the real people who can be there, proactively get involved in. I'm using this term over and over again, proactively get involved in and make sure activities continue. That is where the problem. I think that is the question that you asked. So I would like to see such an opportunity coming up, although we don't have a system like that at this particular moment, at the time when we develop the provincial adaptation plans. Now, an organization like SLYCAN, who can bring together the youth in this country, can come up with their activities and implementation plans at provincial level when the provincial adaptation plan is being done. Which I'm pretty sure when you start doing it at the provincial level with the provincial authorities, having an implementing team, not as one-off events, as you said, things will continue. And when you as an organization get involved in, there's always be monitoring. And this is not an organization that has been established only to perform this activity for the sake of doing this, for the sake of getting funds, isn't it? So an age organization that has been there for some time, getting youth rallying around, getting involved in climate change related activities, will have the strength to organize youth at the provincial level as well and give that leadership. I'm pretty sure things will work out, because the line of thinking, even in the administrators, have changed now. Things have evolved. Sometimes the old examples that you brought in, they were very effective under the conditions that were there earlier. Now the situation is different. So let's look at it different. Although I also do not have a model, my point is, let the model be brought by youth as well. You will be knowing, for example, how to get people involved in, youth involved in, and how to get them, give them devolved authorities to make sure things are activated on the ground. So let's start with this provincial adaptation plan. That's a point that I want to make. Thank you. Thank you, Senasya.
Thank you very much, Professor Marambe. Would like Dr. Sugatapala and Mr. Satura Singh also like to comment on this?
Yeah, may I? So I want to build on what Professor Marambe said. That is correct. Like we have many policies, plans, but then activities on the ground is the issue. So we have to have maybe very small activity, but done correctly. So where we can engage youth in many different ways. For example, now we just talk about this research. Now we think that when we called research, which is basically for university and research organization, that's wrong. Now we have what we call this citizen science coming as a big stream now, where the uneducated even person can contribute to research. So I think we have to look at those aspects. Now, for example, the technology can play a major role. Like we have mobile phones. Just one example. You look at this plantation forestry, for example. Now we are talking about lack of information. For example, growth rate, how much survival. We need a lot of information to manage it. So now even youth can be part of this monitoring thing, because they can have his mobile phone just capturing the the picture. Then he can translate that onto the maybe biomass amount, the height or whatever. So we can develop that type of tool. So I think youth are very innovative in that context. So therefore, even waste management, for example, we have one of the major issues in Sri Lanka is lack of data. And its accuracy also. So therefore, now earlier there was a lot of argument on citizen science regarding the accuracy of data, data quality. But when you look at its, the amount of contribution they can make, we can also improve the accuracy so that we can outweigh the accuracy issue by its contribution to the knowledge. So therefore, I think we have to look at the implementation of activities in different level. Their engagement, youth engagement there. I think there are many opportunities there. But then we have to develop that type of projects, capturing, as I said earlier, how it contribute to the final goal, like maybe the local government level, national government level, maybe like the sustainable development goals, whatever. But we have to have that linkage, how it contribute, maybe very small percentage, but we have to quantify. So we have set that as a target. For example, let's say we have a target of increasing the forest cover by say 2% or 3%. Then we can say that by doing this particular activity, we can contribute to 0.1%. That's okay. So it contributes something, but we have to have that linkage. I think when we do that, I think any activity we do can make a useful one and progressive. And as Professor Marabe indicated, that we have to continue that. We can follow up. In that process, the youth can play a major role of capturing the progress even. So that's my view. I think basically we have to have implementable projects so that we have best practices to show in the future. So that's my feedback to the question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugatapala. Mr. Saturasinghe, would you like to maybe add anything?
Yeah, while agreeing with what Dr. Sugatapala and Professor Marabe said, what I can see is even the available data. The majority of the agencies are not willing to share this data and information. So that is one constraint. Other than that, there's a communication gap. So the agencies are trying to implement their plans and actions in their own, and the youth are being kept aside. So I think there should be a proper communication channels to share the information, as well as the link with them. And it's not really the sort of when I say proper communication in the sense, as the other speakers mentioned, youth are innovative and they expect something new, not the traditional or the old-fashioned one. So there should be some sort of new way of thinking and new way of sharing the information and data and various other things for them to be active and participate in national programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Saturasinghe. And now, actually, I would like to also quickly apologize to all of the questions that we couldn't take, and my questions as well, which I couldn't ask. But it's been a really great session. I know we are short of time, but we have a quick My Robot, which is a virtual whiteboard that has been set up. I have dropped the link on the chat as well. My colleague Nipun will maybe run us through this process. Nipun?
Yeah, I could explain, Saini.
Sure.
So the My Robot is in the chat box. All you need to is click on the link and go to the web page, and you can see a screen like this. So yeah, these are the 3 questions that we are expecting answers from all of you. And based on of course, the sector, agriculture, biodiversity, and forestry. If anyone wants to add or like to add any comments or their answers to these questions, all you need to do is you need to add a sticky note. Click here, and you can add the sticky note easily, and you can type on the sticky notes.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay,
if anyone unable to add comments or answers, please type it in the chat box, or one of our team members will add it into the box. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. So, Nipun, if you can maybe just keep your screen shared, we could perhaps go through some of these questions. So the
Okay,
challenges, thanks. So the challenges that youth face, I think we did have some of the speakers touch on that, but I think I would like to move on to the last question, that is on who should provide these resources. So if you look at our second question here, it is on what resources, capacities, and support do youth need to better engage in the climate dialogue. And we're trying to divide this up across the three sectors. So we have one for agriculture and one for biodiversity and forestry. However, I would like to move on to the third box. If you could zoom in on the who should provide these resources. So if you have any responses that you'd like to add to this. So I do believe that we did answer some of the, we do have some responses to the second one, but in, okay, so we do already have some responses to universities and schools. So we did speak a lot on what youth need to better engage in, say, in the climate dialogue in relation to the agriculture sector or the biodiversity, the forestry sector. So some of the ones that we identify were capacity building, awareness raising programs, access to material. So who, in your opinion, and there's no right or wrong as we're discussing this, so who do you think would be responsible? So we as a think tank, we do have certain events that we planned, and we have capacity building sessions for youth in the areas that we work in, as well as events such as these that we hold virtually, where we bring in experts to talk about this. So similarly, if anyone could maybe write it on the chat, you could even unmute yourselves and talk, or you could directly put it here on the Miro board. So we have CSOs for agriculture, and for biodiversity and forestry, we have universities and schools. Sorry, you might have to zoom out, sorry, a bit because you can't see that. Okay. I would kindly request, and we'll try to stick to this to maybe in about 2 or 3 minutes. If anyone has any suggestions, please do go ahead and let us know. It would be good if we could do this together. There is a sticky note that's currently being... media can play a huge role in promoting successful projects. Yes, that is correct. I think, yeah, that is also a responsibility, as we would see. Any other thoughts or comments on? So the Miro board, or some of the other boards, are also getting filled out. So some of the challenges that youth face in engaging in NDCs and climate action, so lack of knowledge on NDCs, lack of awareness. On the chat, we have Osita, who needs to act? Okay. So this could be an input that we have. All stakeholders need to work in addressing gaps identified. So government, private sector, youth organizations. So that would go across to actually both of the sectors. And we do talk a lot about stakeholder mapping. So all of the stakeholders that we identify when implementing an initiative, all of them would also have a role to play in this. I see mobilizing private sector and CSR, focused resource allocation by governments. Right, and we also seem to have some input coming in from Facebook. We have, all right, and what else? Mobilizing private sector as CSR projects, and okay, this seems to be slowly getting filled out. Okay, and thanks, Anas. Government authorities, private, I would assume that will be private sector, NGOs, universities and schools. Thank you very much. And thank you, I think, for when you keep joining our program, it's always nice to see familiar faces. So thank you very much for joining. We're just going to keep board on for about a minute, and the link will be up, so you could also perhaps add your input to this. All right, so I think with that, I know we are 4 minutes over time. I'm very sorry about that. But what we could do is with that, we could actually close the session with, sorry about running over time, but I would like to thank all of the speakers who joined us today. I know it's a bit late here in Sri Lanka, but I would like to start off by thanking Ms. Fleur Newman from the University Secretariat. She had to leave currently, unfortunately, but she was there for some opening remarks, and that was great. I would also like to thank Professor Buddhimarambe, Ms. Anuruddha Saturasinghe, Dr. Susu Gadapala, as well as our team members, Ashan and Ruani, as well as everyone from the team and all those who took part as attendees for joining this session. Thank you for giving us your Friday evening. I hope this was useful for you. Please do keep in touch with us. One, thank you, Anas. We have another sticky note input on the chat for those on the team. So thank you for giving us your Friday evening. I hope you all learned, and please do keep in touch. I will drop email address on the chat, so you could keep in touch for our future events that we organize, and could also join as well. So thank you once again, and good night from Sri Lanka.